Hi, welcome to Flashstarts. We're here on the 21st floor of the downtown Cleveland National World Global Headquarters for Flashstarts. It's actually the top of the Palace Theater in the penthouse. You can't get here by elevator. You have to take the 20th floor and walk up. It's got a great view, and we're here to answer questions. 2 years ago, when we first got started with the accelerator, we were able to meet all the teams one by one. This year, just by sheer volume, we've had to resort to a less hands-on interview process, and it's really put a constraint on our time. So we thought the best way for you to meet us was through a Google Hangout. So my name's Charles Stack, and I'm here with
Jennifer Neundorfer.
What I'd like to suggest is we have a little bit of prepared information that we can convey, much of which is available on the website, but it sometimes is different from hearing it from us. But what I'd like to suggest is you start queuing up questions because there's a slight delay between our talking and the transmission, and if you start putting your questions in now, we'll have all sorts of things to answer and we won't have to ramble on aimlessly. But let me give you just a tiny bit of background about the program. We just had our 2-year anniversary. We've had two sets of teams go through our summer program. So we're launching our 3rd season right now. I think the key thing about our program is the amount of engagement that you will get from the two of us. We are more deeply involved with our teams than a lot of accelerators. We literally spend every hour, every day of every week for the 90 days working with the 12 teams that we select. And if you don't like us, now would be a good time to find that out. I'm going to let Jennifer talk for a little bit and tell you about how the program operates.
Yeah, so parts of our program are pretty standard to other accelerator programs, but then we've sort of taken it a step further and tweaked it based on what we think makes the most effective accelerator program. So we take 12 software startups. We're focused exclusively on software, but within that we look at a variety of different industries, whether it's healthcare IT, enterprise, digital media. We're particularly focused this year on software to help political engagement, given that Cleveland will be hosting the RNC in 2016. So a wide variety of industries. Take 12 teams, invest $25,000, give them a lot of resources, including the hands-on coaching from Charlie and myself, access to a team of 20 highly skilled interns who help the teams throughout the course of the summer, a network of over 40 qualified mentors, and we basically go through 3 months of rapid cycles of iteration with the goal of proving market validation, getting a product to market, and hopefully getting paying customers. And with software businesses, there's no reason that all of you entrepreneurs can't be successful getting paying customers by the end of our program. One of the unique things about Flashstarts is that we also have a follow-on investment fund where we make, at the end of that 3-month program, after Charlie and I have done hundreds of hours of diligence because we meet with each team 4 to 5 times a week, we then deploy follow-on capital. So unlike some accelerators where a class graduates and the accelerator is off to working with the next group, we make follow-on investments to give you the runway that you need to take the company to the next stage. And we continue to stay involved as coaches and mentors. So that's the really basic overview of our program. And I see that we're starting to get a few questions. So hopefully you'll continue to ask questions about the few pieces that we mentioned. One question is, what is F-Success and how is it related to Flashstarts? F-Success is a platform that allows accelerators like ours and accelerators from all around the world to market their, market and then facilitate the application process. So F-Success is a way for all of you who are interested in our program to apply. You'll see we have a customized application that includes, a lot of different questions that we use to help evaluate teams. We love when people submit videos. Gives us a chance to see you, but it's really a tool for us to make first contact with you, and it facilitates our application process, nothing more than that.
And let me give you some insights into how we actually go through the process, because I don't know that the perspective you take on your startup is similar to the perspective we take when we're trying to decide whether to admit you or not. And I think it might be helpful for us to share with you how we look at the applications. And really the first thing we look at is, did you finish the application? And it may sound silly, but it's true. You finish the application, put some answers in all the forms, and we can actually do a thorough evaluation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the idea big enough? So we're in the venture business. We're in the business of trying to get a couple of home runs out of a dozen at-bats. And if an idea is not large and scalable, adventure investable, it may be a great business and you should probably go ahead and do it, but you're not a good fit for most accelerators, certainly not for ours. So that's probably the number one cutoff. The number two is probably how you react to feedback from us. So we will give the teams that we think have a big disruptable idea, we will give you feedback. We've already started with the first set that finished their applications in January. I think most of those would have already gotten feedback from us. And we've given you like a challenge. Either you need a technical co-founder, or is the market really as big as you say, or who are your competitors? Your thoughtfulness in responding to those challenges will go a long way to determining whether or not you get in. The next question, which is related to what I just brought up, which is how does the rolling deadline work? So I have a tough time submitting a decent application by March 1st. So the rolling deadline is to encourage people to apply and get engaged in that iterative process. So your chances of getting admitted will increase the longer we stay engaged with you. At some point, we'll either tell you you're in because we've done as much engagement indirectly as we could, and we're happy with all your answers. We think you're coachable, it's a big idea, and we really want to pursue it. Or we've decided that one of those things isn't fixable, and we'll tell you that right up front, and you can apply to one of the other many great accelerators around. But what it lets you do is experience the iteration process to see if you like us, and we can decide whether we like you and take it from there. So the earlier you can submit, the better it will be for both of us. Now, if you haven't finished by March 1st, that's okay. We'll both get to it when we do.
Another question based on or around sort of team applicability is from a company that looks like it's in New York and asking about where we require our teams to be. So we require our teams to be here in Cleveland for the summer, given the hands-on nature of the program, plus the fact that if you are remote, you don't get to benefit from the team of interns that we have. So all of our teams are here for at least those 3 months, but we don't mandate that our teams stay here in Cleveland after the accelerator. So if you want to come to Cleveland, we had a team last summer that came from Chicago to Cleveland for the summer and is now back in Chicago continuing to build out their business. So we're open to where you locate after the business or after the accelerator.
So what do we have next here? Oh, somebody wants to disrupt the college admission space from India. Is this accelerator the right one for us? Well, one of the challenges we have in the United States is visas and work permits. So if you can solve that problem, yes, we'd be happy to consider your application. But that does take some time, so I'd encourage you to get started early on that.
Another applicant has a question around the $25,000 investment. So it's a good question about how much equity does that give Flashstarts, and what are the terms for potential follow-on funding. So we give $25,000 to every team on the intake, and we get 8% equity. And that's pretty standard market rate for software accelerators around the country. You'll see that deal offered through a lot of them. In terms of the follow-on funding, we don't have one set deal structure because it really depends on the team. We often do convertible notes, but we also do equity grants, or we also do equity rounds. And the amount can range. It really depends on what the company needs and who the other investors are in the round. Sometimes we'll make a smaller investment. Sometimes we'll invest up to 500,000 and do the whole round for the company.
So Jennifer's comment in that one paragraph, I think she said it depends about 4 times, and that's really indicative of one of the things that I think differentiates our approach to this process. Is it is not programmatic. We've both had a series of successful startup companies, and all the paths have been different. And one of the things that we're quite sure of is that your path will be different from the paths that we took to successful entrepreneurship exits. So it's really important for us to look at your strengths and weaknesses, the advantages of the market that you're in, the product that you're intending to offer, and determine what's the right path for you. And then the program that we will deliver over the course of the summer really is dedicated to delivering you the right tools you need to go on your unique journey. And that I can't overemphasize that enough, because we do run a program, everyone shares a lot, but as far as what the milestones are or what you're focused on will vary from company to company.
The next question is, what makes a successful team? And there are some key criteria that we look at, particularly when we're evaluating teams on the intake. Charlie mentioned one of the most important variables, which is around coachability. It's really important that the entrepreneurs that we work with are open to feedback, both from us, but also from the marketplace. Because what you'll find is anyone who is too deeply attached to their idea isn't going to be successful with market validation. Market validation requires an openness and a willingness to hear real feedback and then respond to it. So coachability is probably the first thing that I would emphasize from customers, from us, from mentors and advisors. The second thing is around judgment. So we're pretty honest with our companies that we will provide a lot of suggestions, and we're very close thought partners throughout the course of the summer. But no one is closer to the opportunity than the entrepreneurs themselves. And it is their job to have the judgment to filter all of the different feedback and input that they're getting and determine which is the most relevant and which direction they're going to go in. And that's something that we try to test with our iterative application process.
So another question that's been upvoted here is how many teams from last summer got follow-on funding? So from our first season, we had 3 teams that got follow-on funding, and from this season, we'll have 4 teams that get follow-on funding, and that varies based on each year. I mean, it depends, and the amount depends, depending what the opportunity is and how much we have in the fund. So it does vary. I think the other piece that's relatively significant is our program doesn't end at the end of the summer, and it doesn't end after we provide follow-on funding. We are very actively engaged right now with a team from the first season in helping them close the final tiny bit of a $1.25 million Series A round. So we will stay involved with our teams and continue to help them raise money as they go forward. And I think that can be, we have pretty good connections locally and nationally, and I think that can be a value that will prove out over time. So the next one is how large are the average teams? It's probably just like a family, 2.2, I would say, slightly over 2. We have done some solo entrepreneurs where we try to bring them in and sometimes pair them with other team members or even with a co-founder. But the preference is slightly for fully formed teams, partly because they can get started more quickly. But 2, 3, 4, anything in that range is perfectly acceptable.
And we do have a slight preference for teams with some sort of technical expertise, given that we are working with software companies. If there is no one on the team that understands software development or can actually do the software development, it just makes it that much harder for that team to move very quickly, and it makes their costs of getting to market much higher because they're outsourcing. That said, if there are teams who have successfully demonstrated that they can outsource effectively, then that's something that we do consider. I would also just say that we are open to entrepreneurs of all ages, different backgrounds. That we just have a very eclectic group of entrepreneurs in each of the 2 classes that we've run so far. And one of the things that we really like and look for are people who have specific areas of expertise that might not necessarily seem like they go together, but when they do put them together, result in some really interesting opportunities. So sometimes we talk to people and they mention that their passions are things that might seem like they're diametrically opposed. That's when some really interesting ideas emerge, or when people have deep industry expertise and have identified an opportunity or a problem that they can uniquely address.
So another good question is, does Flashstarts actively seek out other funders to close rounds? And I should have mentioned that earlier, yes. I'm a member of the North Coast Angel Fund, a member of the Ohio Venture Capital Association, a member of the American Angel Association, and on the funding that we do, we will sometimes lead, sometimes follow, but we're able to bring in both our limited partners as sidecar investors, as well as engage a variety of other angels in the region and venture firms around the country.
Do you want to answer this question about AWS?
Sure. We're an Amazon partner. Amazon's been kind enough to let us into the accelerator program. And as a result, our teams benefit from $5,000 in Amazon Web Service credits. That's real money. You'd otherwise, if you're going to use AWS as a platform, you'd be paying actual dollars for that. And so you get the advantage of being able to deploy on their services at no cost for a very long period of time. And then there's a follow-on question about .NET and the Microsoft program. We're not yet a member of that program, but if you want to push the point, I suppose we could be. I know that they do a similar thing.
And it's not necessarily a negative. We don't, mandate that our companies use AWS. It's just an added service that we're able to provide.
We're also about to announce a partnership with OneHub. Is that right? Or HubStop? I'm trying to remember the name, but they provide a series of marketing tools. That's it's like a $9,000 value. It's 90% off the normal price, and that's about to be announced in the next week or so. That's another value-added function.
So there's a question here from an entrepreneur who themselves does not have time to be part of an accelerator program, but is interested in whether we provide access to co-founders and can help them find co-founders. It's a great question. I'll answer it in sort of a roundabout way. One of the things that we actively do is, if you're not, and I say this because if you're an entrepreneur out there who wants to run a business but you don't necessarily have an idea, this is the time to tune in. One of the things that we do is partner with organizations here in Cleveland and across the country, as well as taking ideas that Charlie and I have. And if we don't necessarily have a team to run them, we go out and find teams. We're always looking for entrepreneurs to fill those roles and run with some of these ideas. I can give you an example. We're working with a hospital system for this coming year to commercialize an idea that is coming out, from their physicians, and is a need that they have identified, but they don't have the entrepreneurs to commercialize it and take it to market. So we do provide some of that matchmaking service between an idea and a team of entrepreneurs. It's a little bit different if you say, I have an idea, but I can't be involved, and I'm looking for someone to run with it. But it's something that we're open to talking about. And there are always ways, assuming that we can find a team that is both a good match and that you can be involved to the degree that that team needs you to be involved throughout the course of the summer, that we're open to that idea.
So I want to just dive into a slightly different area before we come back to the questions, because I don't know that everybody understands what a week here is like. The first week is rather chaotic. We go from 4 people on a quiet Friday afternoon to 54 people on a really loud Tuesday this year. And it's are there enough chairs? Are there enough desks? I can't sit with my back to a window because I'm afraid of bats. That kind of stuff that happens on that first day. So there's a lot of chaos, but then it very quickly revolves into a routine that's something like there's a Monday morning presentation, the teams present, and it could be a sales pitch, it could be an investor pitch, it could be a pitch for interns, which is usually the first week's one. And there's a presentation, and sometimes accelerators get chastised for over-focusing on demo day and presentations. But in all honesty, if you can't pitch your idea, no one is going to either invest in you or buy from you. So the importance of being able to stand up in front of a group of people and sell is really a prerequisite for success in a startup. So we make no apologies for our Monday morning pitch events, because it's what entrepreneurship's all about. The rest of the week consists of just keeping your nose down and working hard. We have lunches rather than give up lunches to random pigeons in the neighborhood parks. We keep you in the office and feed you food and feed you information. Not every lunch, but 1 or 2 a week, where we'll bring in outside experts to present on a various set of topics. The lunches are optional, so if you already know a lot about a particular area like online marketing, you can feel free to skip that one and eat with the pigeons. But otherwise, I think most people attend because they're pretty useful. Then we have a series of mentors that come in and do office hours, where you can meet for free with a lawyer for half an hour or an accountant for half an hour for free. And these are all carefully selected experts who aren't just accountants and lawyers, but are actually accountants and lawyers who have knowledge about startups. That's one of the drawbacks to being in a really little city, is it's hard to find the people with the kind of expertise that we have here. The startup culture in Cleveland is probably 1,000 times better than it was even 5 years ago. I've been here that long, so I can say that. And the number of professional service providers that really know their stuff is more than adequate. And access to them is really good, because we have a great reputation in this community. So when we bring in an accountant or a lawyer to meet with you, they are the best ones in this region and a national caliber. So that's another event that will occur during the weeks. We also partner with an organization called Summer on the Cuyahoga, which is designed for people new to the city of Cleveland. And they provide a lot of events around the city that are free and paid, probably 5 a week, to introduce people to the joy that is Cleveland. And those opportunities and events are available to our interns and our teams. Otherwise, it's just a lot of hard work. You meet with me and Jennifer at least twice a week, pitch once a week. You get 1.9 interns to work with you on an average basis. Sometimes that's painful for the intern, but it's just how the numbers worked out.
And just to speak a little bit to the startup environment here in Cleveland. So Charlie is a native Clevelander and can speak to how it's evolved over the course of the last decade or two. But I moved here about 4 years ago from the West Coast. So I was in LA and then San Francisco before that, and actually then New York prior to that. So, I had been in a lot of communities that are considered, the places to be to start a company. And I was really pleasantly surprised by how much activity was going on here from an entrepreneurial perspective, and how much of that activity, it wasn't just the people who were starting companies, they were starting really good companies, and they were really dedicated and passionate and qualified entrepreneurs. So I think you'll find that there's a very robust entrepreneurial ecosystem here And as Charlie mentioned, the key difference from areas like Palo Alto and LA and New York is that you can actually access the resources. And I can tell you from having been out in some of those other communities, it's very hard to reach the people that you want to reach, and it can be hard to really stand out. So here, our companies are able to get access to the mentorship that they need, and also get things like press or beta customers or things like that that can be harder in some of the cities that are so much more saturated. And the final benefit of being in a place like Cleveland is that your capital goes much further, whether it's the cost of living to the cost of hiring a team, things like that. We've seen some of our companies consider moving to other places, and they may still do that at some point, but they realize at the early stage when they need to be conserving cash, there are a lot of benefits to being here in Cleveland.
So a popular question right now is, do you accept startups on later stages, or do we have one offer for all? It's a question we've struggled with over the last year and a half. The answer is we have one offer for everybody. It's not an it depends. And part of that is because we honestly believe that it's neither the 8% equity nor the $25,000 that is a reason for us to accept you or you to accept us. It's really the synergy you're going to get from being in the program. Because if down the road that 8% would have mattered if it was 7%, or the 25 would have mattered if it was 50, we all did something wrong, because we're all trying for home runs here and to generate an enormous amount of wealth. So that $25,000 or that 8% should be something that no one's ever going to remember what the details were, because we all made so much money. If not, like a lot of startups, your company will not succeed, and you'll go on to try something else, and you will equally not remember the 8% or the 25,000. And if we negotiated with every single team a market value for their enterprise, we'd never get the team selected. And that's the reason why there's almost no accelerators in the country that will negotiate at the early level. Now, having said that, the follow-on investing is a different animal. The follow-on investing is a negotiation. It is done at a arm's length issue around your valuation, how much we want to invest, and what you think you're worth.
And just a follow-up point there, it is rarely the initial accelerator investment of 25,000 is rarely a valuation peg, because investors get that that's the market rate and that accelerators won't negotiate, and so it doesn't limit the valuation of the companies coming out of the program.
Another really good question I like that I understood the question is, I understand the importance of market pull for any new thing to succeed. How do you do market assessment? And that's a really good question. Whoever you are, I like you. And I think it's a key issue for a significant number of our teams, is trying to figure out market assessment. What the market will do, and in some cases, I think a minority, you can actually go out and do the market research, but so many times we find out that what customers say they will do does not equate to their behavior when you're out there selling your product. So there's very little, there's an immense value in actually selling something to an actual customer and having a transaction. And that's the whole minimum viable product, get out and sell before you build, as opposed to doing lots and lots of market research. Now, some of it's necessary to learn the market terminology, where the pain points are, but for most companies, getting out there and selling something, even if it's kind of ugly, kind of slow, doesn't do everything it needs to do, but getting out there and selling it, trying to sell it, and rolling that feedback into the product as quickly as possible, that's the type of market assessment that we encourage.
One of our mentors likes to say that the first version of your product, no matter how long you spend on it, is going to be ugly. So you might as well just get that first version out there to get it over with.
Yeah. So the next question is, I'm not sure I'm a great fit for your accelerator, not sure I need an accelerator. but I could use advisor mentoring services. And sadly, we've gotten so busy with so many applications supporting teams from the last 2 seasons. We really don't have the bandwidth to do anything other than focus on our companies that are in our portfolio. So the only way to get us, other than tuning into a free WebEx, is to actually go through our program.
So we have a couple questions. We have a question from email, and it actually relates to a question that was asked online. I'm just looking for it, around where we have had expertise in the past. So the email question was about how many startups we've helped in the financial tech space. And I'd say it's at least 3, potentially 4 off of the top of my head that have been in the fintech space. And they range from, we had a company that was in sort of financial planning for millennials, another company that was in the compliance space to help investors and anyone raising capital comply with the most recent SEC regulations. And then we have another company that is in the real estate crowdfunding space. So fintech is actually something that we've done a bunch of work with, and we have some interesting partners here in the Cleveland area to help some of our future fintech companies. Another question was around university education.
Let me just segue onto the back end of that to talk about access. So one of our companies is trying to put together a financial package, and last week we walked them in to the president of a bank and let them present to the head of the bank. And that's just an example of the kind of access that you get in a second-tier community like Cleveland, where there's a huge recognition in this city of the importance of startups to the community. And our presence or persona is relatively well known here, so we can walk you into the head of a bank and get you an audience there. Now, it doesn't happen everywhere, it doesn't happen all the time, but it is better than it is in most other cities.
So just to finish this industry-specific question, we also have a lot of experience in the university education market. So I think we have another 3 or 4 companies that were in that space, whether it was on the university admissions side, the university IT side, or sort of the recruiting and management of pipeline. So that's another area where we have some expertise. There's one question that I want to move to, because I think we may have given some people the wrong impression. So someone who says, you can't help me unless I have a sellable product or a product that's already developed. We work with companies at a variety of stages. So some of our companies come in with an idea and no product to sell. Some have come in with a product that they've cobbled together and it's the first MVP and they're out there selling it. I think what Charlie was saying is, we are firm believers that even if you're coming in with an idea and you don't have a product, there are things that you can do very, very quickly to start going out and selling that vision or that product that you will build, potentially even before you built it, right? There's a lot that you can do mocking something up in, PowerPoint or Keynote, or, putting together some simple wireframes, and suddenly someone thinks that you have a product built when in fact you don't. And it's that exercise that we think is really useful, particularly before you go out and sink a lot of capital into building something, because it helps you validate an idea. So just to be very clear, we are open to companies at all spectrums, including those where it's just an idea.
So I've been through an accelerator before. This is a question. I've been through an accelerator before. Is that a negative or a positive? It's absolutely a positive. The fact that you have some expectations will blow them away. There's part of it. And the fact that you understand how the program works and how to leverage the assets within a program will put you a good step or 2 ahead of the other teams that haven't been through an accelerator. And it's interesting, I don't think we would have, either one of us, thought that might become something that's becoming more common. But just this year, we're probably looking at 6 applications from teams that have gone through other accelerators. And, there's some dilution involved because they're taking another 25% or 8% for 25,000. But I think the value, again, if you can deliver the value on the back end, that'll not get remembered ever. So yes, we're happy, delighted to look at companies that have been through other accelerators.
And it's companies and also entrepreneurs. If you went through an accelerator with a company that ended up not working out, and you're starting something else, the same point holds. What you learn going through that first process will be invaluable to you the second time around.
So the number of people on this call keep increasing, so we're going to keep going for a while. If you have questions, put them in there. We'll get to them. We still have a list here that we're getting to slowly. But put the questions in and upvote them, and we'll make sure we get them. Oh, there's a good one. That's for you.
This one?
Yeah, or unless you want me to do it.
Well, I think we should both do it.
All
So
right.
you
do your version, I'll do mine.
Okay, well, I need a second to think about it. You
All right.
ready?
So the question, I'll read the question.
Okay.
Can you tell a specific story that involves your proudest moment since starting Flashstarts? And I would say it was on the recruiting side. So we had a team that we were trying to get. And I had gone to a hackathon and met the team, or met half the team, and was impressed. And I said, stay in touch. He had a stupid idea at the hackathon, but I thought he presented it really well and was interesting. And then I went to another hackathon and ran into him again, and he had a much less stupid idea. I said, you really ought to consider our accelerator. And he said, well, I'm partnering with somebody who just got out of Google, and we're probably going to go to California. So I basically stalked him for about 3 months and finally convinced him and his partner to join our team. And I think time will tell, but they may end up being one of our big successes. Huge idea. It's the kind of thing that if you explain with words, people just shake their head and glaze over and nobody gets it. But the minute you show it to them in a use case that they understand, people go, oh shit, this could be huge.
Yeah.
And that's almost a universal reaction. So my proudest moment was managing to recruit them here and actually turning their product into something that could be amazing.
I think my proudest moment came during the reception that we had after our second demo day. And there was one individual in particular who, when we were starting Flashstarts 2.5 years ago, we had gone out to and met with and told him about this concept. And he had sort of a bit of elitism about him and said, I don't think you can do that here in Cleveland. I think you have to be in the Bay Area or you have to be in, some other city. And he was very skeptical about whether we could be successful and whether this model could work here in Cleveland. And I will never forget, he came up to me. He didn't make it to our first demo day. Second demo day, he came up to me and said, I was stunned. You have proven that you are building investable companies here in Cleveland. And it just validated our whole model. Our companies had done a wonderful job, not only presenting, but really making meaningful progress over the course of the summer. I don't know if any of you have been to demo days for other accelerators, but it's clear when the companies are sort of dressing up what they've done and are sort of doing vapor pitches. And what was clear to this investor was that these were companies that had made real progress where there was a real investment opportunity there, and that was very gratifying.
So what we do, and I get this question a lot, particularly on the investment side, what value do we add? And it's hard to quantify it directly, but I think the best way of looking at what Jennifer and I do is kind of recognize patterns, and it's more pothole avoidance than anything else. So we will, hear one of our entrepreneurs say something, and that'll go, okay, you want to be careful of blank, or here's a strategy that might work. So there's a pattern recognition piece that we can get to quickly that I think helps most of our entrepreneurs save time and pain, in some cases money. And I think that, as much as the help with strategic direction, it's more avoidance of potholes, maybe equally, that equate to the value that we deliver.
Mm-hmm. And specifically, someone asked about marketing. So, we do a lot of marketing for our program. We have someone on staff, Grace Menick, who does a lot of the PR and communications for Flashstarts, and she is instrumental in helping our teams as well, helping them think about things like media plans and marketing plans. Well, we don't actually do that for our companies. We're there to advise all of you, and as our brand is growing, which it has significantly in the past 2.5 years, and as we get more press for Flashstarts and increase our footprint, that has a halo effect on our teams as well.
So in addition to the marketing and PR services that we have in-house professionals, we also have one other thing that we haven't mentioned yet, which is we have a really high-speed internet connectivity, which for some certain types of businesses can be very valuable. It's currently 1 gigabit, and by the end of the summer it'll be 100 gigabit. And yes, I said 100 gigabit, and I say that because it'll be the first available commercial 100 gigabit line in the entire world. And so Cleveland is justifiably proud of that. And if you stay a little bit past demo day, I think you will be part of it as well.
So another question on sort of how we mentor teams, and do we see teams recombining and things like that. As Charlie said, a lot of what we're doing is helping with pattern recognitions and the like. That is specifically geared towards helping teams navigate towards a successful path. And we will be vocal if we think a team is on the wrong path and help them try to figure out how to get on the right path. Sometimes the issues that come up are about team composition. Sometimes it's figuring out how to get rid of a team member, or who do they need and how do they find the person to add to a team. We do encourage, not all of our teams are successful. So for us, if we have, in the long term, if we have 4 of the 12 teams that are successful, those are really good odds. So we expect that many of these teams, either because there's not a market, or the product market fit wasn't there, or there was some team issue, that they won't be successful. And we do encourage entrepreneurs to recombine, whether it's joining a team that was successful or recombining with some of the people from the program and starting a different idea. We think that's all part of the natural process of building a startup.
So somebody asked a question closely related to that, but not a lot of accelerators are happy to talk about, but most teams fail. And the question is, how many companies from the past 2 summers are still working together on their product? So in the first year we did, we took 8 teams in. We had 2 house teams we spun together, and of those, I think 4 are still active and pretty successfully pursuing their business opportunities. From this last summer, it's 11 out of 12. We had 1 team close right after the program. The other 11 are up and going great guns.
Mm-hmm. So a question about the interaction between interns, between people who are applying to the accelerator and those who may also want to be an intern. We have had some folks who apply to the accelerator, and for whatever reason we don't like their idea, or we think it's not the right idea for our program. And if they also apply as an intern, we may accept them that way. The one thing I will say is that we are in the heat of the intern recruiting right now. So often we make decisions on the interns before we decide on the teams. So we can give you an initial read. There's actually a team right now that we're talking to where we've given them an initial feedback on their idea. We can't guarantee whether or not we will accept them, but we have told this individual that we'd also like to have them as an intern. So it's really that person's decision about whether they want to take the certainty of an internship or go for team acceptance.
So there was one I just saw. What do you want to see in a coachable entrepreneur? So I want to draw a bright line between coachable and thrashable, because we see entrepreneurs that are not coachable because they always know the right way, and they could be right, we could be wrong, but if they're not coachable, neither Jen nor I are going to provide much value, so don't come. But the other side of the equation is we see entrepreneurs that follow the advice of the last person they talk to. So we want our teams to be somewhat coachable, not entirely coachable. If they listen to everything that we say, that's probably a mistake because we're not right all the time. You just have to figure out when we are.
Yeah. There's a question here that's a good one and sort of speaks to, I'll make a general point about the level of commitment that we require from our entrepreneurs. And the question was, had people gone through the program while successfully having a day job? Or had they successfully gone through the program while having a day job as well? And we have tried that a few times. So we've had a couple of entrepreneurs who had a day job where they had a lot of flexibility, so they were able to be in our offices almost full time throughout the course of the summer. And what I would say is, you can do it. You can. There are sort of hours in the day if you have the flexibility to make that work. But I can't say that I would recommend it. And part of it is launching a startup is hard work, and you really need to be fully committed to the process. And what we found is that entrepreneurs with a day job are not, both feet are not fully in the opportunity. And they can always retreat to the day job if the startup doesn't work out, and often that becomes something that doesn't provide the sense of urgency that an entrepreneur needs at that early stage. So it's, there are exceptions to that rule, but what we've found through the 2 or 3 people that have tried that in the past is that it doesn't have a high likelihood of leading to success. So we're really looking for entrepreneurs who are 100% committed to this, and have the desire to see it going forward, should it be successful.
So people aren't dropping off, so we're gonna just keep answering questions. What's the most radical pivot a team at Flashstarts has had? That's a question I hadn't really thought about before. And you hear about pivots and entrepreneurship and startups, and I can't think of a really radical one that we've had.
Yeah, I mean, we've had teams, so one that is, they're still in the same space, but I mentioned that there was a team that was doing financial planning for millennials. And they had a great piece of software, really good plan for how to go to market, and it was a very crowded space, and they realized as they got into it that being able to differentiate was going to be hard. They went through a bit of almost a dormant period trying to figure out whether there was product market fit and how to take the idea forward. And where they have found a sweet spot is actually in financial planning for divorces. So it's still in the financial planning space. It's leveraging the same core technology, but the market that they're going after is significantly different, and impacts the product design, the marketing, their channel partners, and the like. So that represents a significant pivot, but it's rare that someone would go from financial services to ed tech. That feels like you're really spinning up a new company rather than making a pivot.
So here I'll knock one off easily. Do you hire MBAs as interns or primarily undergraduates? Honestly, if you can provide value to our teams that want to work for minimum wage, we don't care who you are or what your background was. Then the other one was, okay, we talked about failure. We talked about the majority of the teams that come through here will probably not be giant successes. What happens if you're a failure? Rather, what happens if your company's a failure? And I think the actual question is, who owns a company and what happens in regards to the equity? Well, if the company's a failure, you almost always go through a very simple dissolution phase that involves just filing with the state in which you incorporated, and then you're done. If there's $10 left in the checking account, you probably owe us 80 cents. And that's about it as far as rolling up and wrapping up a company.
And the other thing another follow-on question that often comes up is, are we going to force you to make certain decisions with your company? And the fact of the matter is, with an 8% equity stake, we can't force you to do anything. And our model is based on this being a coaching relationship that is productive. So we never, if we were forcing you to do something, something would have gone terribly wrong in the relationship to begin with. But we're not, with that initial investment, we're not taking a controlling interest. So you have control over your company. Sometimes when we make follow-on investments, we'll get a larger percentage of the company, and at that point often take a board seat where we have more of a say, but it's not that we're taking controlling interests.
Quick answer to a simple question. Our process runs all the way through early May, so you're not done with us until we're done selecting, and that'll happen early in May, so you have enough time to plan to get here.
Yep. And a few questions about when things need to be submitted. As we mentioned earlier, it is a rolling deadline. The sooner that you can submit your application, the better. But what I would say is, don't focus on getting the perfect application, because as we've said, our process is iterative. So it's not that you're going to submit your application, we'll review it and say yes or no. You'll submit your application, we'll review it, see if we're interested, come back to you with questions, and the process goes from there. One thing that might be worth mentioning right here is, and it sort of relates to how much work you should do before applying and coming to the program. We limit our investments to Delaware C Corps. C Corps, mostly Delaware. There are a few exceptions there, but really to Delaware C Corps. And what I would encourage all of you to do that are really at the early stage is don't do too much of the legal work before you get to a place like Flashstarts or whatever accelerator you end up going to. We've made it very easy for our teams. We have stock legal agreements. It allows you to save a lot of headache at the beginning. Headache and money on legal fees, both at the beginning and when you raise capital down the line. And just to be clear, the reason that we limit it to C Corps is that if you're going to take any sort of outside capital, you will have to be a C Corp. VCs are not investing in LLCs, so you're going to have to convert at some point, and therefore we take C Corps on the intake. So it's one thing just to consider, and a question we often get from applicants.
Let's see, what's next here?
So connections to customers and distributors. And this is one where, we, as Charlie has mentioned a number of times, we have very strong ties here, both in Cleveland and, nationally. We both, worked in companies where we have relationships nationally, and we bring those to bear to the work that we do here. What I would say is, there are some industries where we have better relationships than others, and that's part of the process that Charlie mentioned. We get to know you, but you get to know us, and you can start asking us those questions about, how we can be helpful to you in your specific business, and decide if this is the right fit.
And before I forget, because this has been so successful and well attended and lots of questions, we'll be doing it again. So look for a notice from us that sometime in the next few weeks we'll have another webinar, and another Google Hangout, and you can put together your even more difficult questions for that time. We got a couple more here, and I think we're going to probably wind up. And actually, before you go, hang on for a second. Don't get nauseous. And let the lighting adjust. And that is the view from our offices looking into downtown Cleveland. It's a little bit overcast, but we have a great view that's looking due west. So it's a lot of fun to be here.
And we promise that if you're here, you will not be here during the snow.
Yeah,
summer in Cleveland is beautiful.
That white stuff turns into sand because we're also on Lake Erie.
Yeah.
So let's see, anything more?
Do you want to take
Most successful company of the last summer and why? Well, I already alluded to who that might be. I didn't give them a name though. Do I want to?
Yes, send it to the.
So yeah, it's Remesh, and you should check them out. And make sure you see a demo. Don't read about it because you'll just get confused.
Yeah. If you go to remesh.org.
They do a lot of work in the office right next to us because they're still working out of our space. And I went in there a couple weeks ago. They had this giant, enormous whiteboard filled with math, except there were no numbers involved. And as soon as you see 1,000 equations with no numbers, you know, at least I know, I'm way over my head. But they do this kind of collective intelligence application that is incredibly simple to use and has nearly infinite use cases that if I could ever guarantee anything, I'll guarantee it'll be a wild success. And now you can notice from my face that the sun is shining here.
And the other thing that I would encourage any of you to do who are interested to see the types of teams that we've invested in the past is to go to our website, flashstarts.com, and you can easily look at the 2013 and 2014 portfolios. And the 2014 pitches are still live. So if you're looking for a place to see, to get an explanation of what Remesh does, you can go and watch their pitch from the 2014 demo day. Their CEO, Andrew Konya, did a great pitch. So I encourage you all to check it out.
Yeah, the demo day video is pretty good. There's also on our website, in case you haven't heard enough from both of us, a series of FAQs in video format that were professionally done, unlike this broadcast, and you know, show us off in much better light, both literally and figuratively.
So I think that gets through most of the questions. As Charlie said, we will do more of these, so we encourage you to come back with other questions. I'm glad to see that those of you who are tuned in like the view. It is pretty spectacular, and we will promise more sun in the summer. I want to just mention that you know, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@flashstarts.com, and we're happy to field questions about the accelerator, the application process. I encourage you all to apply through F6S. As I said, that's just the platform for us to get applications from all of you. And as Charlie said, make sure that you actually fill in all of the different areas and submit, because there are some people who have done sort of half of the application and we only review it once you've actually fully submitted it. Thank you all for joining us. This was great, and we look forward to seeing your applications and following up with all of you.
Thanks for listening. Bye.